Dear listeners, a new day and a new story to discuss. Today, I'm going to tell you a story that interests me. Listen and write down what you think about this situation. I'm interested in your opinions. As the evening sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across our living room, a sense of unease settled over me. Eliza, my wife of 9 years, the mother of our 2 beautiful boys, sat across from me. Her eyes, once sparkling with mischief and love, now seemed distant, lost in thoughts I couldn't reach. Eliza, I started, breaking the silence that had become a frequent, unwelcome guest in our home. Talk to me. What's going on with us? She looked up, her gaze meeting mine for a fleeting moment before shifting away. Lucas, it's hard to explain. Try me, I urged, leaning forward, my hands clasped tightly together. I feel like you're miles away, even when you're right here. A deep sigh escaped her lips. It's like I'm constantly fighting a battle, Lucas. A battle where I'm alone, doing everything by myself. I frowned, confusion clouding my thoughts. But I'm here, Eliza. I'm always here. You're here, but not really here, she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. You're physically present, but it's like you're in your own world. I shuffled closer, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and frustration. I don't understand, Eliza. I work. I help with the kids. I'm doing everything I can. It's not just about doing, Lucas. It's about connecting, understanding, being a part of this family and more than just tasks. I looked at her, really looked at her. The tiredness in her eyes was more pronounced than I had ever noticed. Eliza, I love you. I love our boys. Isn't that enough? Her laugh was bitter, void of any real humor. Love isn't just a word, Lucas. It's actions, it's being there, emotionally, mentally. It's noticing when I'm overwhelmed without me having to spell it out. But I try, I protested, my voice rising slightly in my defense. I do the chores, I play with the boys, I make sure we're financially stable. What more do you want? It's not about wanting more, Lucas. It's about needing you to be part of this family in every sense. I feel like I'm making all the decisions, handling all the crises. Where are you when I need someone to lean on? I ran a hand through my hair, a sense of helplessness washing over me. Eliza, I'm right here. I've always been here. Tell me what to do, and I'll do it. It's not about telling you what to do. It's about you seeing it, feeling it, being a part of it naturally. Our eyes met again, and in hers, I saw a well of emotions, frustration, sadness, longing. It hit me then, the magnitude of what we were facing. We weren't just drifting apart. We were on different ships in the same stormy sea. Eliza, I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose us, I said, my voice cracking with emotion. I don't know if there's an us anymore, Lucas, she replied, her voice laced with a sadness that echoed in the depths of my soul. Her words hung in the air between us, heavy and suffocating. In that moment, I realized the gravity of our situation. This was more than just a rough patch or a temporary disconnect. This was a fundamental rift in the very fabric of our marriage, a gap that had been widening silently, insidiously, over time. I thought we were happy, I stammered, my voice barely above a whisper. Eliza shook her head slowly, a melancholic smile touching her lips. We were good at pretending, Lucas. Good at going through the motions. But why? Why didn't you say something earlier? I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. I tried, in my own way. But maybe I wasn't clear enough, or maybe we just stopped understanding each other. The room felt colder, the space between us wider than ever. I reached out, an instinctive gesture to bridge the gap, to reconnect. But Eliza gently pulled away, her body language speaking volumes. We need to talk, really talk. Figure out where we go from here, she said, her voice steady but her eyes betraying a turmoil of emotions. I nodded, a lump forming in my throat. Yes, we need to talk. I want to fix this, Eliza. I want to understand, to make things right. She looked at me then, her eyes searching mine, as if looking for something she once knew, something that had been lost along the way. I hope we can, Lucas. For our sake, for the boys' sake. But it's going to take more than just words. I swallowed hard, the reality of our situation sinking in. This was not just a conversation. This was a turning point, a pivotal moment in our lives together. Let's start tomorrow, I suggested, my voice firmer now, fueled by a determination to fight for us. Let's sit down, open up, and really listen to each other. Eliza nodded, a fragile hope flickering in her eyes. Tomorrow, then. As she stood up to leave the room, I watched her, a mix of love, fear, and resolve stirring within me. This was my wife, the woman I had vowed to cherish and protect. I couldn't let her slip away, not without a fight. The room was silent now, the echoes of our conversation lingering like ghosts. Tomorrow would be a new day, a chance to start mending the cracks in our marriage. But as I sat there alone, I couldn't shake off the feeling that we were standing at the edge of an abyss, with one wrong step capable of plunging us into darkness. The awakening of doubts had begun, and the journey ahead promised to be long and arduous. But for Eliza, for our family, I was ready to walk that path, whatever it took. Morning light seeped through the curtains, casting a soft glow across the kitchen where I sat, nursing a cup of coffee. The silence of the house was a stark contrast to the turmoil in my mind. Today was the day Eliza and I had agreed to talk, really talk. I wasn't sure what to expect, but the knot in my stomach grew tighter with every passing minute. As I heard footsteps, I looked up to see Eliza entering the kitchen. She looked weary, her usual vibrancy dimmed. I gestured to the chair opposite me. "Coffee?" I asked, my voice hoarse. She nodded silently, and I poured her a cup, the familiar routine momentarily comforting. We sat there, sipping our coffee, the weight of unspoken words hanging heavily between us. Finally, Eliza set down her cup, her hands trembling slightly. "Lucas, I don't know where to start. There's so much I've kept inside. Just speak from the heart, Eliza. That's all I ask," I replied, my voice steady despite the churning emotions inside. She took a deep breath, her eyes meeting mine. "I feel lost, Lucas. Lost in a life that somehow, along the way, stopped being what I wanted. Stopped being what I needed." I leaned in, confusion and concern etched on my face. "But why? What changed?" "It's not just one thing. It's 1,000 little things," she said, her voice cracking. "It's feeling like I'm the only one steering the ship, the only one who sees the storms ahead." I frowned, trying to grasp her meaning. "I've been here, Eliza. I've been trying. Trying isn't enough, Lucas. I need a partner, someone who's really with me in every sense. I need you to be present, to share the load, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally." I struggled to understand, to see where I had failed her. "But I've been doing everything I can. Work, kids, house. What more do you want me to do?" Eliza shook her head, a tear rolling down her cheek. "It's not about doing, Lucas. It's about being. Being there for me, understanding me, connecting with me." Her words hit me like a wave, washing over me with a realization of how far apart we had drifted. I thought I was doing that. I thought we were okay. We were never okay, Lucas. We were just good at pretending, at going through the motions. But inside, I've been screaming for you to see me, to really see me. I reached across the table, wanting to comfort her, to bridge the gap between us. But she pulled away gently, a sad smile on her lips. "I need more, Lucas. I need you to understand me, to know me. I need you to be the man I fell in love with." Her words were a plea, a desperate call for something I wasn't sure I could give. "I want to be that man, Eliza. I want to be everything you need. But can you? Can you really change, Lucas? Can you be the man I need, the partner I crave?" I swallowed hard, the reality of her words sinking in. This was more than just a rough patch. This was a fundamental disconnect in our marriage, a chasm that had grown too wide to ignore. "I can try, Eliza. I can try to be better, to be more. For you, for us." She looked at me, her eyes searching, seeking the truth in my words. "I want to believe you, Lucas. But I'm scared. Scared that we're too far gone, that it's too late for us." The air was thick with tension, with the weight of our failing marriage pressing down on us. I reached for her hand again, this time holding it gently, a silent promise to try, to fight for us. "Let's not give up, Eliza. Not yet. We owe it to ourselves, to our boys, to at least try." She nodded slowly, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "Okay, Lucas. We'll try. But we need help. We can't do this alone." I agreed without hesitation. "Whatever it takes. Counseling, therapy, whatever you think will help us." As we sat there, hand in hand, the dawning journey ahead seemed a little less intimidating. We had taken the first step, acknowledging our struggles, our failures. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. "I'm scared, Lucas," Eliza whispered, her voice barely audible. "So am I admitted, my heart heavy. "But we'll face this together. We have to." The conversation continued, slowly unraveling the threads of our discontent, our disappointments. We talked about everything, our hopes, our fears, our dreams that had somehow slipped away in the mundane routine of life. As the morning turned into afternoon, the initial awkwardness gave way to a tentative ease, a fragile reconnection. We weren't solving all our problems in one day, but we were starting to understand them, to understand each other. I miss us, Lucas, Eliza said, a hint of the old warmth in her voice. I miss us too, I replied, my heart aching with the truth of it. As the day wore on, we made a plan, a commitment to work on our marriage, to attend therapy, to communicate better. It was a daunting task, but for the first time in a long time, it felt like we were on the same page. The evening found us in the living room, the kids playing quietly as we watched, a semblance of normalcy in our strained household. But there was a new understanding between us, a new determination to fight for our family. I love you, Eliza, I said as we put the kids to bed, the words feeling more meaningful than they had in a long time. I love you too, Lucas, she replied, her eyes meeting mine with a sincerity that filled me with hope. As we turned off the lights and headed to our room, the challenges ahead loomed large. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like we were facing them together, united in our resolve to save our marriage, to rediscover the love that had brought us together in the first place. The unveiling had been painful, heart-wrenching, but necessary. And as we lay in bed, side by side yet miles apart, I knew that the journey to healing had only just begun. Days turned into weeks, and the strain between Eliza and me morphed into a silent, lingering presence in our home. We were trying, really trying, but the gap between us felt like a chasm that widened with every failed attempt to connect. I remember one evening, sitting on the edge of our bed, watching Eliza as she folded laundry. The mundane task seemed to consume all her attention, a welcome distraction from the tension between us. Eliza, I ventured cautiously, do you ever think about how things used to be between us? She paused, a pair of socks in her hand, and looked up. All the time, Lucas. I missed those days. I moved closer, my heart racing. Can we get back there? To that place where we were happy? Eliza sighed, setting the laundry aside. I don't know, Lucas. It feels like we're two different people now. Like we've lost something along the way. I reached for her hand, desperate to find some connection. But we're still us, Eliza. We're still the people who fell in love, who built a life together. She pulled her hand away gently, her eyes sad. It's not that simple, Lucas. We've changed, grown apart. I'm not sure if we can find our way back. I felt a surge of frustration, of helplessness. But we're trying, aren't we? We're going to therapy, talking things out. Doesn't that count for something? It does, Lucas, but it's not enough. It's like we're speaking different languages, living in different worlds. The conversation spiraled, our words a tangled mess of emotions and grievances. We were like two dancers out of sync, each step forward met with a step back. I don't know how to reach you anymore, Eliza, I confessed, my voice breaking. And I don't know how to let you in, Lucas, she replied, tears welling in her eyes. The room felt smaller, suffocating with our unspoken fears and unmet needs. We lay in bed that night, our bodies close but our souls miles apart, each lost in our own thoughts. The days passed in a blur of routine and therapy sessions. We talked, we argued, we cried, but the distance between us remained, a constant reminder of what we had lost. One evening, I found myself in the backyard, staring up at the stars. The vastness of the sky made my problems seem insignificant, yet they weighed heavily on my heart. Lucas. Eliza's voice came from behind me, tentative and unsure. I turned to see her standing there, wrapped in a sweater, her hair tousled by the wind. Yeah. She joined me, her gaze following mine to the stars above. Do you ever think about what would happen if we can't fix this? If we can't save our marriage? The question hung in the air, heavy and foreboding. I swallowed hard, the possibility a bitter pill to swallow. I try not to think about it, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. But yeah, I do. And it scares me, Eliza. It scares me more than anything. She nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Me too, Lucas. I'm terrified of losing you, of losing what we once had. We stood there, side by side, lost in our own fears and insecurities. The struggle within was a relentless battle, one that threatened to consume us. I don't want to give up, Eliza, I said after a long silence. I can't give up on us. Neither do I, Lucas. But sometimes, I wonder if it's enough. If we're enough. The night air was cool, but the chill I felt was from within, a cold realization that our journey was far from over. The struggle within was our greatest challenge, a battle of understanding, of reconnecting, of finding the love that seemed buried under years of neglect and misunderstanding. Maybe we're trying too hard, Eliza suddenly said, her voice a mere whisper in the darkness. I turned to her. puzzled. What do you mean? I mean, maybe we're so focused on fixing things, on finding solutions, that we're missing the point. Maybe what we need is to just be. To remember why we fell in love in the first place. Her words struck a chord within me, a faint glimmer of hope in the gloom of our struggles. So, what do? Just stop trying. Not stop trying, Lucas. But start living. Start enjoying each other's company again, without the pressure of fixing everything all at once. I considered her words, the simplicity of the idea both daunting and liberating. Just live. Together. Yes, she said, a small smile playing on her lips. Together. Let's start small. A movie night, a walk in the park, a dinner date. Let's just enjoy being with each other. It was a plan, a starting point. A way to bridge the gap between us, one step at a time. Okay, I agreed, feeling a flicker of excitement at the prospect. Let's do it. Let's just be us again. As we headed back inside, hand in hand, the weight of our problems seemed a little lighter, the path ahead a little clearer. We were still struggling, still fighting to save what we had, but now we had a new strategy. To reconnect, to rediscover the joy in our relationship, to find the love that had been overshadowed by pain and misunderstanding. The struggle within was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like we were on the right track. Together, Eliza and I could face anything. Together, we could find our way back to each other. The air was tense in our kitchen, thick with the unsaid and the undone. Eliza and I had been trying, stumbling through our days and nights, attempting to rebuild what was crumbling. But that night, something was different. There was an electricity in the air, a sense of impending storm. I watched Eliza as she moved around the kitchen, her movements mechanical, devoid of the grace she once had. The silence was suffocating, and I knew I couldn't bear it any longer. Eliza, we need to talk, I said, my voice cutting through the quiet like a knife. She stopped, her back still turned to me. We've been talking, Lucas. What's left to say? I took a deep breath, bracing myself. I can't do this anymore. This dance we're doing, it's killing me. She turned then, her eyes meeting mine. There was a weariness in them, a resignation that scared me. What are you saying, Lucas? I'm saying that I can't keep pretending that everything's going to be okay. We're falling apart, Eliza. And I don't know how to stop it. Tears welled up in her eyes, spilling over and running down her cheeks. I don't know how to stop it either, Lucas. I'm trying, but it's like I'm trying to hold on to sand. It just keeps slipping through my fingers. I moved closer, my own heart aching at the sight of her pain. I love you, Eliza. I always have. But love isn't enough, is it? We're missing something crucial, and I don't know if we can find it again. She wiped her tears, a sob catching in her throat. I don't want to lose you, Lucas. But I'm so tired. Tired of fighting, tired of failing. I reached out, tentatively taking her hands in mine. Maybe we need a break. Some time to figure things out, to see if there's anything left to save. The words hung between us, heavy and terrifying. A break. The first step towards an end I wasn't sure I was ready for. Is that what you want, Lucas? A separation? Her voice was a whisper, fragile and broken. I shook my head, lost in the turmoil of my emotions. I don't know what I want, Eliza. I just know that what we're doing now isn't working. We stood there, in the heart of our home, a home that had witnessed the best and worst of us. And in that moment, I felt it all breaking down, the walls we had built, the dreams we had shared. Maybe you're right, she finally said, her voice resigned. Maybe we do need a break. The words cut through me, a confirmation of our failure, of our inability to hold on to the love we once thought unbreakable. We'll figure out the details later, I said, my voice barely audible over the roar of emotions inside me. For now, let's just try to get through this. Eliza nodded, pulling her hands away and wrapping her arms around herself. Okay, Lucas, we'll get through this. But as I watched her walk away, something inside me shattered. The breakdown was more than just our marriage. It was the breakdown of everything I had believed in, everything I had worked for. That night, as I lay in our bed, alone in the darkness, I realized the truth of our situation. We were more than just a couple in trouble. We were two souls adrift, lost in a sea of hurt and misunderstanding. The breakdown was not the end, but it was the beginning of an end I hadn't foreseen. I turned to my side, staring at the empty space where Eliza used to lie, and felt a pang of despair. Our bed, once a haven of love and comfort, now felt like a vast, cold expanse of loneliness. I thought back to the days when we were happy, when our love seemed invincible. How had we come to this? How had we allowed our love to erode to the point of no return? As the night wore on, the silence of the house was oppressive, a reminder of the distance between us. I could hear Eliza's faint sobs from the living room, each one a dagger to my heart. I wanted to go to her, to hold her, and tell her that everything would be okay. But I knew it was a lie. Nothing was okay. The next morning was bleak, the air between us thick with unspoken regrets and unshed tears. We moved around each other like ghosts, our interactions brief and perfunctory. About last night, I started, my voice faltering. Eliza looked up, her eyes red and swollen. There's nothing to say, Lucas. We both know where this is heading. I wanted to protest, to fight for us, but the words died in my throat. She was right. We were on a collision course with the end, and there seemed to be no way to change course. I'll sleep in the guest room tonight, I said, the words feeling like a surrender. Eliza nodded, her lips a tight line. Okay. That day was a blur, each hour a slow march towards an inevitable conclusion. We were like actors in a tragic play, our roles predetermined, our lines scripted by the failure of our marriage. As night fell, I lay in the guest room, staring at the ceiling. The breakdown was complete, our marriage a shell of what it once was. And as I drifted into a fitful sleep, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a long, painful journey towards an unknown destination. The struggle within had broken us, and now we were left to pick up the pieces of our shattered lives. It was a breakdown, not just of a marriage, but of two souls who had once believed in a forever that was now slipping away like sand through our fingers. In the stillness of the guest room, where the shadows of our broken dreams loomed large, I found myself grappling with the weight of our unraveling marriage. The air in the room felt stifling, thick with the scent of loss and regret. Each morning, as I woke up to the gray light filtering through the blinds, the reality of our situation hit me anew. Eliza and I were like two parallel lines, close but never meeting. One particularly somber morning, I made my way to the kitchen, where the routine sounds of life unfolded. Eliza was there, her back to me, fixated on the coffee maker. Her posture was rigid, a physical manifestation of the emotional barrier between us. Good morning, I mumbled, my voice barely rising above the sound of the coffee dripping. She turned, offering a nod that was both an acknowledgement and a barrier. Morning, Lucas. The space between us was more than physical. It was a chasm filled with unspoken words and unexpressed feelings. I poured myself a cup of coffee, the bitter aroma somehow comforting in its familiarity. Eliza, I began, hesitant, about the therapy session today. She cut me off, her voice firm yet weary. I'll be there, Lucas. We agreed to see this through. I nodded, appreciating her commitment even in the midst of our despair. Thanks. I think it's helping in some way. Is it? Her question was laden with skepticism. Sometimes, I feel like we're just uncovering more reasons to question this. Us. Her honesty stung, but I knew she was right. Therapy was not a magic cure. It was a mirror reflecting the deepest, most hidden parts of our relationship. We left for the session in silence, the car ride a journey in itself. Each traffic light, each turn, felt like a metaphor for the decisions and changes we were facing. In the therapist's office, we sat side by side, yet worlds apart. Dr. Matthews, a kind-eyed woman in her 50s, welcomed us with a gentle nod. Let's talk about last week's exercise, she suggested. Did you find any moments of reconnection, no matter how small? Eliza spoke first, her voice tinged with a sadness that had become too familiar. We're trying, but it feels like we're reaching out across a vast emptiness. I'm not sure if our hands will ever touch. I listened, my heart heavy with her words. I feel the same, I added. It's like we're in a fog, reaching out, but not sure what we're trying to grasp. Dr. Matthews listened, her expression thoughtful. Sometimes, the road to revelation is through the fog. It's about finding clarity in the midst of confusion. About understanding not just each other, but yourselves. The session unfolded, a tapestry of pain and hope, woven with our words and silences. We delved into the heart of our issues, exposing the raw, tender parts of our souls. As we drove back, the silence between us was different. It was contemplative, not empty. Eliza broke it as we neared home. Lucas, do you ever think about what would happen if we don't make it? Her question hung in the air, a specter of a possible future. Every day, I admitted. And it scares me. But I also think about what happens if we do make it. That scares me too, in a different way. She nodded, understanding in her eyes. It's like we're standing at a crossroads, isn't it? Each path leading to a different future. We arrived home, the familiarity of the place a stark contrast to the uncertainty in our hearts. That evening, as we sat in our living room, The silence was our companion, less oppressive than before, but still a reminder of the distance between us. Lucas, Eliza said suddenly, turning to me with a look I couldn't quite decipher. Do you remember when we first met? How simple everything seemed. I smiled, despite the ache in my heart. Yeah, I remember. We were young, carefree. Everything was an adventure waiting to happen. We've lost that, haven't we? She asked, a wistful tone in her voice. The adventure, the simplicity. We have, I agreed. Life got complicated, messy. We got lost in the responsibilities, the routines. She sighed, leaning back on the couch. Maybe that's what we need to find again. That sense of adventure, of discovering each other like we did back then. I pondered her words, the idea both daunting and appealing. It's not going to be easy, Eliza. We're not the same people we were back then. No, we're not, she conceded. But maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe we can discover who we are now together. The conversation shifted then, from our struggles to our hopes, from the breakdown to the possibility of rebuilding. We talked late into the night, sharing memories, dreams, fears. It was the most honest conversation we'd had in months, and it left me feeling both drained and oddly hopeful. As we headed to bed, Eliza paused at the door to the guest room, where I had been sleeping. Lucas, would you want to try sleeping in our room tonight? No pressure, just as a step. I looked at her, seeing the vulnerability in her offer. Yeah, I'd like that, Eliza. We slept side by side that night, not touching, but closer than we had been in a long time. It was a small step on a long road, but it was a step nonetheless. The road to revelation was proving to be a journey of rediscovery, of peeling back the layers of hurt and misunderstanding to find the love that had once bound us together. It was a road fraught with challenges, but for the first time in a long while, I felt like it was a road we were traveling together. The morning sun cast a warm glow through the curtains, a stark contrast to the cold uncertainty that had settled in my heart. Today felt different, as if the air itself was charged with the weight of impending decisions. Eliza and I had been walking on a tightrope, our marriage a balancing act of trying and failing, hoping and despairing. As I sat at the kitchen table, lost in thought, Eliza walked in. There was a determination in her stride that I hadn't seen in a long time. Lucas, we need to talk, she said, her voice steady but her hands betraying a slight tremor. I nodded, bracing myself for what was to come. I know. We've been circling around the inevitable for too long. She pulled out a chair and sat opposite me. Last night, after you fell asleep, I did a lot of thinking. About us, about our marriage, about what I want, and what I need. Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. I felt a knot form in my stomach, a mix of fear and anticipation. And I prompted, my voice barely a whisper. And I realized that we can't keep doing this, she said, her eyes meeting mine. We can't keep pretending that we're on the path to recovery when every step feels like we're moving further apart. The honesty of her words cut through me. So, what are you saying, Eliza? That it's over? She sighed, a deep, weary sound. I don't know if it's over, Lucas. But I do know that we can't keep going on like this. We need a real change, not just attempts at fixing things. I leaned back in my chair, a sense of helplessness washing over me. I've been trying, Eliza. I've been trying so hard to be what you need, to reconnect with you. I know you have, and I've been trying too, she replied. But trying isn't enough. We need more than just effort. We need a breakthrough, a real, tangible change in our relationship. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. This was it, the final stand, the moment where everything would either come together or fall apart completely. Then what do we do? I asked, my voice tinged with desperation. Do we just give up? Walk away from everything we've built together? Eliza shook her head, her expression pained. I don't want to give up, Lucas. But I also can't keep living in this limbo, this constant state of uncertainty and unhappiness. I stood up, my emotions a whirlwind of confusion and fear. So what's the solution, Eliza? What's the magical answer to all our problems? There's no magical answer, Lucas, she said, standing up to face me. But maybe we need some space, some time apart to figure things out, to see if we're better off together or apart. The suggestion hit me like a physical blow. Space. Time apart. The very ideas felt like the beginning of the end. Is that what you want? I asked, my heart racing. A separation? She hesitated, then nodded slowly. I think it might be what we need. A chance to breathe, to reassess everything without the constant pressure of trying to fix our marriage. I felt a sense of despair wash over me. And what if we realize that we're better off apart? What then? Then we'll deal with that when it comes, she replied, her voice laced with sadness. But we owe it to ourselves, to our boys, to at least try to find some clarity. The conversation that followed was a blur of logistics and practicalities, a stark contrast to the emotional turmoil churning inside me. We talked about living arrangements, about how we would explain this to our boys, about how we would navigate this new, uncertain path. As the day wore on, the reality of our situation sank in deeper. We were taking a step back from each other, a step that could either lead us back together or irrevocably apart. The finality of it was overwhelming, a sense of loss pervading every corner of our home. That evening, as I packed a suitcase with the essentials, I felt like I was in a daze. Each item I placed inside felt like a piece of our shared life being tucked away, out of reach. Eliza watched me silently, her face a mask of stoic resignation. "Lucas, are you sure about this?" "About moving out." I paused, my hands hovering over the open suitcase. "I don't know if I'm sure about anything anymore, Eliza. But I do know that we can't keep going on like this. Maybe this space will give us the perspective we need." She nodded, a single tear trailing down her cheek. "I hope you're right. I hope this leads us to the answers we need." I zipped up the suitcase, the sound echoing in the now empty room. "I'll come by to see the boys. We'll figure out a schedule, make this as easy on them as possible." Eliza wiped her tear away, trying to muster a brave smile. "They'll understand, eventually. We just have to be honest with them, with ourselves." I picked up the suitcase, feeling its weight as more than just the sum of its contents. It was the weight of our fractured life, of the love that was now hanging by a thread. As I walked to the door, I turned to look at Eliza one last time. "I still love you, Eliza. Despite everything, I never stopped loving you." Her eyes met mine, filled with a mix of pain and love. "I love you too, Lucas. Always have, always will." With those final words, I stepped out of the house, the door closing behind me with a soft click. It was the sound of an ending, or perhaps the beginning of a new chapter, one that was yet to be written. The road ahead was uncertain, the future unclear. But as I drove away, I knew that this was our final stand, a stand that would either break us completely or lead us back to each other, stronger and more in love than ever. The journey was far from over, but for now, it was a journey we had to take separately in the hope of finding our way back together.